I'm Marty Porter. I'm executive producer and director of Silicon Valley Video. Many of you were at our show at the end of January, and it was great. For a lot of us, it was years in the coming for many of us. We had everything going for ourselves that day except a lot of time. And as a result, we stuffed a jam-packed program in a day that culminated with a keynote by Steve Wozniak. And we realized we owed the panels and the panelists and the attendees a chance to really dig a little more deeply into what the show is about and what the panels are about. So we're going virtual, we're going hybrid in our own sense here for the next 45 minutes. You've got a chance to ask questions of the panelists. They'll rough it up in their own little way on continuing the conversation for the next 45 minutes as well. And today's topic is the first of several that we're having over the next 3 weeks coming from this. Today's topic is how to manage a remote video production workforce. Mark Yoder from Accenture is the lead, and our panelists is Zachary Bennett from WebMD, Luke Hale from Shootsta, Dave Helmly from Adobe, and Dave Rosen from Sony C. On the remaining program, next week we'll be talking about making the cloud work on-prem. The week after, virtual production in the real world, and then we're going to bring together our 3 digital first panels on production, technology, and what's new with Zoom into a bigger conversation on March 23rd. Same format, and if you've registered, you're already registered for these as well. With that said, we have our big event will be back next year. We've signed the contract for January 23rd, back at the Computer History Museum. We've taken double the space, so start spreading the word now and put that date, January 23rd, in your calendar, and stay tuned for details around NAB time in April. But we're back. We'll see you next year. And with that said, ASG has been a tremendous partner for this event. Dave Enhoy has been a personal mentor and friend for me as we've gone down this journey. And they've agreed to try something different starting next week on March 9th. And again, the 16th and the 23rd. And with that, let me hand it over to Amy Lounsbury from ASG. Will give a brief explanation of what ASG is going to be doing during those remaining shows during the next 3 weeks of the month.
Thank you, Marty. So we all had it was a great educational experience for us at the summit. A big part of that was also networking, meeting with industry friends, having those great conversations. And as the industry continues to evolve, what we wanted to do was not just create and extend the conversation on the panels, but also continue the networking portion of it. So Dave Van Hoy and Marty Porter came up with the brilliant idea of recreating a jobs fair, but doing it virtually. So for the next 3 panels, we'll also be doing a virtual jobs fair. The ASG is hiring, and if you're interested in joining the ASG team, this is a great opportunity to meet with us. We'll have some breakout rooms. We can have some wonderful conversations and talk about some of the openings that we have today and some of the openings that we anticipate in the future. So for the next 3 Thursdays, please join us for our virtual jobs fair while you're also tuning into the Q&A sessions. Thank you.
Great, Amy. Thank you, and thank ASG for this great service. And with that, this is a Q&A, so ask your questions, everybody. Throw them into the chat. You'll share with Mark Yoder, who will be leading and facilitating this conversation. So just put them in the chat, and he'll take it from there. I've also put in the chat the speaker emails if you want to chat with them directly as a follow-up, so you can get in touch with them. They've shared their emails with you. And with that, here's the panel. Mark, it's yours. Take it away.
Thanks, Marty. Good to see everybody again. It's great to continue this conversation. I'm glad we got so much momentum in January, and it's great to see that we're going to continue to move forward. We are talking about remote production again, the norm of moving people out of physical locations or decentralizing them. I think when we dive into topics like this, it means a little bit something different to each person. So I think before we dive in with a lot of questions, I do want to get the perspective of this panel Let's try and put a definition around what it means to be a remote video production team. Luke, what that means to you is probably not what it means to me. So why don't you kick us off here? Remote video production, give us your definition at Shootsta.
Yeah, sure. I think it's remote and distributed, right? So we do have some folks that work within offices at Shootsta, but we're separated by a lot of distance. So it's a global production company spanning, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, the UK, the US, Mexico, Philippines. So we've got folks everywhere, and a lot of them do work from home. So we're talking about somebody in a single location, and then of course our offices as well. And doing that in a cohesive way has all kinds of challenges, as we discussed in the panel. And Zach and I were even talking this morning, trying to work through some, challenges that we've been presented with recently, and just trying to figure out how to, sharpen some of those swords in pre-production and other areas that get kind of messy, because collaboration with video has always been hard. And, the great thing about this panel is we have some great technologists that have helped to make that process easier. But it's a very collaborative endeavor. It's an artistic endeavor. It's a cultural endeavor, and all of those things present unique challenges when you're trying to manage that kind of team when you're not all in the same place.
Yeah.
So that's how I would define it.
Zach, how about for you?
Yeah.
You guys are distributed or decentralized as well. Talk
Yeah.
about
Remote video production, it's kind of two things, right? Like, first, we're all working remote, due to, pandemic and what have you. But just to me, I do think about it. And we've always been in this world where it's also just the flexibility, right? Of being tied to one office, one building. It, can be good, but for sure, having the ability to just be flexible. And for us, we do, my team is spread out, North America and Europe. And of course, people within our company we're working with all over the world. So it really is, the remote aspect was always there. Of course, what's different now is we really don't have a center. I mean, we have some offices, but we're not all meeting there anymore. And, it's good because in fact, I've just jumped ahead on one of the bullets here because, the disadvantage that I find, and the part that was great was when we had this discussion last time and we were in person. And I do think like the greatest challenge is how do we work through these little Zoom boxes with each other? And to Luke's point, doing our creative endeavors, and film and video is such a, you're in that space, you're in that room. And so it is, it is for sure, that's a challenge. It's certainly something that I'm sure everyone here misses, is just having that FaceTime. But again, even still, the remote side is, it just opens up possibilities, which is really kind of wonderful too.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Let's turn to our tech experts here, David Rosen. Let's start with you. How do you define remote video production to a client who's just trying to figure it out?
Yeah, well, where things are now, it's usually them coming to us and saying, how do I do this, right? I mean, we're not having to kind of explain the benefits of it anymore because it was, as everybody said, it's just forced upon them. So, the way that we kind of explain it is anytime you've got people spread out in various different areas and you're all working on the same thing. I mean, literally it's as simple as that. And we've got people on this panel like yourself. We deal with a lot of live broadcasts. So there's certainly, one aspect of the spectrum is how do you deal with a live remote production? And then, there's other folks on here dealing with, not finished content, but non-live content. So whether it's they're working on an ad spot or they're working on a full feature film. I was just at HPA last week and was really impressed to hear how far the industry has come in doing remote production. There was a fantastic session by Amazon Studios who did the entire Lord of the Rings of Power series 100% remotely, everything in the cloud. Now they're Amazon, right? I'm sure that they can manage their costs a little bit better than others, but the fact is that they were able to do a production of that size fully remotely. And you've got everything in between. So again, just to keep it super simple, you've got people in various locations all working on the same project. How do we make that happen?
David Helmly, what about for you at Adobe?
Yeah, I would agree. And Dave Rosen, that was a pretty amazing thing we got a chance to witness last week at HPA. It was fascinating to watch a lot of these topics. And one of the things that I certainly took away from that conference when we're talking about remote video production is what happens, on site, when we're in the office, the way we've been doing it, what's missing? It's like the people that we talk to, how do we bring that back remotely, whether it's collaboration, things like camera to cloud, where it's like someone's running around with a card trying to back it up. How do you duplicate all these processes? And what we generally talk to customers about almost on a daily basis is, tell us about the production that happens when you all are all together. And then we just try to match that remotely. So whether it's working on a team project together and sort of say, hey, if we're in one area, I can run over to someone else's cube and I can sort of say, hey, here's what's going on. How do I duplicate that, remotely? So those are the types of things that, we're certainly working on internally at Adobe, but we're getting all that information from customers, because I think not only do we miss that, you need that to have a good production, and hybrid just adds a little bit more challenge to that, because sometimes you're in the office, but not everybody's in the office. So it has to work the same, whether or not you're in the office or out of the office. So again, hybrid for remote video production. So that's the way we look at it.
Touching on kind of a point you made just there, from my perspective, in the live world, there is a difference when you're in person, right?
Yeah.
If you can be in a physical control room talking to people, the body language of me, and the non-communication, the non-verbal communication between my director and my technical director or producer to other crew members, like, you can have these conversations behind the scenes. It's harder to do when you're in a live environment. So from my perspective, in my world, we do a lot of things remote. We're set up during the pandemic. We shifted very quickly to a remote production setup where our technical directors and producers were dialing in. They were controlling our infrastructure globally from their homes. We now try to bring those folks back into the studio, into the control rooms for our high profile events. We're still set up so we can work from home, but we try to keep people as close to those studios and those control rooms as possible, so we can shift back and forth between the two models based on the requirements. It's that kind of that right sizing, the right fit for the production. We do also have teams that, post-production and creative teams, they sit pretty much from home almost all the time. We try to bring them in for collaboration and engagement with the rest of the team. That is a bit of a shift. I think people have settled in and they like it. They figured out a model of how they can be more effective with their time at home. And so in some cases, when you bring people back into the office, they're less effective. Anyway,
yeah, and I would add to that, just to get some of the panel thinking as well, is there are challenges out there that are hard to overcome. I'll give you an example. I have a customer that's been asking me a lot, and it's been coming up quite a bit from some other customers. Show me, an over-the-shoulder solution. I want to be able to see your Premiere timeline. I want to be able to see the output. I want a 50-50 split. And, I've actually been working with a partner now that's developed a panel where I can just click a button and it sends a QR code to Zach, for example. Zach just scans it on his iPhone. The application comes up and, all the security that you would expect. As I'm scrubbing my timeline, it's appearing on whatever device he scanned it on, whether it's his laptop or iPhone, iPad. And then I can control while we're talking just by hitting a button that says, here's my entire timeline, here's just my output, or a 50-50 split. Because that's what we would normally do if you were sitting behind me as my producer in my office. You would say, hey, can you show me this? You may not know how to edit as the producer, but I'm certain we're having this discussion. So that's just another challenge of technology that we have to overcome. So we're constantly looking for partners and solutions to help with that. So And Zach, by the way, I do need to show that to you because it's pretty.
I was just gonna say, you've been holding out, Dave, because
I
we're
know.
still using like remote desktop software.
Oh
to
yeah,
do
you don't need any of
everything.
that. Yeah, it actually uses the camera in your iPhone, so you don't even have to use Zoom. So it's
Okay.
great.
Yeah, just yesterday I was on Zoom and it works, but it's not optimal.
Yeah, tools are changing too. I think it's a good theme as well, Mark, as I throw it back over to you. So
Yeah, I do see our first question here in the chat. David Worth, cinematographer and director. David, if you're open to it, if you want to come off mute and ask your question, I think this is pretty open-ended what you've got here. Interested in the how-to of remote production. Is there a specific aspect of that you're curious about? We'd love to dive in. David?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah. I'm planning a production in Italy and I'm trying to see how to manage it remotely.
So tell us a little bit about the production. Multi-camera shoot. Is this
High
talking
def.
heads? What are we working with?
Yeah, it would be high def shoot on location, and it would be in probably a difficult location like Venice, Italy. And I'm trying to see how to monitor everything. I would love to be able to because I'm now in my 80s. I can't get around that well anymore, and I'd like to see how to monitor what's happening.
For sure. Zach, I think you deal with this quite a bit, don't you?
For sure. Yeah, and thanks for the question, David. Hopefully this answers it. I mean, it sounds like you're producing this piece. All crew, everything is going to be in Venice, handling the actual production, and sort of how do you interact with them. And this is what we do all the time. I have producers flying around doing this work, and it can be very simple. It can be as simple as you have someone on set with their Zoom open for you, just an open channel. I think a few things to kind of keep in mind that we've run into this with is making sure you know how you're communicating with all the different crew and with the client. So for instance, there have been times, and this is from some of our learnings, where the clients are on, they're going to want to also be viewing that through Zoom. And again, a capture card or something like that, but would work to send it to Zoom. Although also typically I like to see the whole set as well, as you said. So that would be someone, another phone or another piece. But again, how many communication channels are you going to have to run, right? You need one, you're going to talk to your DP, your on-site producer, but then you also have a separate channel, perhaps talking with your client. So I think, the tools that we're using right here, it's really what we use currently. We absolutely rely on Zoom. We have done FaceTime for sure. So any of the conferencing pieces, but I think make sure everyone's clear with which team you're talking to, what's the system, because otherwise you got texts coming in from one side and you got Google chats coming in from somewhere else. So as long as you lay it out ahead of time, hey, this whole crew, we're going to work on this kind of communication tool. Client's going to be in this one, kind of walled off. So I think I hope that answers some of your question. I assume you've already got your crew and everything.
The main thing I'm interested in is being able to monitor what the cameras are seeing.
Oh, yeah. So then that's in my mind that the camera, capture, there's numerous types of to do that. For us, we do feed it in, just a conferencing software, but I think there's probably a ton of solutions to do that.
Yeah, one idea would be to actually take a feed from the camera and plug it into the laptop or a laptop, right? And use that camera now as the camera for that Teams presenter that's joining the call. So then spotlight it on Zoom, and then you get an actual feed straight from the camera of what they're seeing on site.
And I would just add, if it's an interview situation that you're actually doing, you can also reverse that, send your image to the prompter, and they can talk right to you.
Okay, that was my main concern, being able to see what the camera sees.
Yeah, I think that's super manageable from wherever you want to be.
Yep. And sometimes, if you, I don't know if you're going to have a switcher on, so we oftentimes will have just a switch there too. Getting a live switch, you can get the multicam view. You can, there's a number of ways to accomplish that.
Great, thank you.
From my perspective, David, it was also, a lot of crews globally that we work with have either similar they've got their own tools that maybe I would pick their ear, pick their brain about how to do that. Like they may have a solution already in mind for you because they've done this. They were doing it so frequently during the pandemic that they've probably got something quick for you.
Yes.
Make sure they've checked the connectivity at the location as well. That's key.
A good point.
Yes, thank you very much.
And then there is some other ideas in the chat there for you, David.
Camlick says Blackmagic. Yeah, I love Blackmagic. I just co-directed a production that was captured on a Blackmagic. The entire production equipment was in somebody's backpack, a Blackmagic camera and a small drone. I find that very refreshing.
Yeah. We can essentially do anything we want now in the size of a backpack, or in some cases on your phone.
Yes.
All right, David, thanks. Folks, don't be shy here. This is a friendly group, I promise. Let's keep moving forward. Luke, let's head back to you. We were kind of talking a little bit earlier. Zach mentioned it, right? The advantages, disadvantages of being remote, having that decentralized team. You've got a global group. Can you talk to us a little bit, maybe start with the advantages, but what are the pitfalls? What should somebody, be thinking through?
Yeah, happy to do it. It is interesting because video is such a cultural expression, right? And one of the things that we struggle with all of the time is we would love to have editors right in the room with the client. Of course, we don't always have that luxury, but to be able to have editors that are located where the audience is located is a huge impact on the quality of the production, just the cultural expectation, the artistic expectation. You get a huge benefit from drawing on talent in those local markets. I was on a call yesterday talking about a larger production effort, and I think it was the first time in my career where we didn't discuss location at all for the onset elements and the remote elements. It was just assumed that people that were participating were going to be participating remotely. And certainly, quality video production is always about competing for the best talent. It's such a talent-driven business, and you want to have the right artists on your project. And having a completely distributed process certainly opens up opportunities for you to take advantage of that talent wherever they may be. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting for me over the last 18 months working with Shootsta is just discovering some of these pockets in the world where there is incredible talent. And sometimes it's talent for different things, illustration and animation, editing. There are real pockets of very talented artists in places like Turkey and Mexico City and some of these places that you might not consider when you're working on a project. But if you need a German editor now, it's pretty easy to post a role in Germany and pick up an editor that way, which is just a huge luxury compared to where we've been in the past, where it's really, there's 40 video editors within my circle of influence here in a geographic location, and one of them speaks German. That's going to be the individual that I bring in to work on a German project. So I would say that is a massive advantage, just the ability to pull from a global talent pool and acknowledge the fact that people don't have to be in the same room. And I really just feel like being in the same room is becoming less and less critical. I think it's really important to be from somewhere so that you can talk about the weather for the first 5 minutes in any meeting. And then outside of that little chit chat, it's just becoming far less relevant, right? Everybody's kind of focused on the work. So people always talk about the new normal or going back, or, to what extent do we go back? How far does the pendulum swing? There's obviously a tremendous amount of value to what happens on set. Hair and makeup is never going to be done remotely unless it's being done by AI. But there are just so many elements that go into production now where, it's not unrealistic to have a huge number of your crew, even roles like a director of photography that you would really kind of never consider being not on set. And now some people are toying with that. We did our first, before Shootsta, I was a producer at Apple, we did our first FaceTime interview far before the pandemic, where we brought in a remote presenter. And of course, we felt like we were so cutting edge. And, now we live in a day and age where it's like, of course, there's someone who's not going to be on set, who's going to want to be a part of the shoot, who's going to be, remoting in from somewhere. So expectations are changing. The access to talent is changing. The opportunity that we have to participate in a global market is changing. And I think that also means that there's a higher expectation for people to specialize. So if you can be called into any production and it's not based on your geographic location, why are people calling you? And I think that that's having an impact on everybody's career within the industry as well, as people start thinking about how they get really, carve out a strong niche for themselves and really compete within an area. Whereas before there might have been a little bit more value to being a generalist. So a lot of these things just end up being those side effects or symptoms of the new working world that we find ourselves in. And, there are things to react to, but it's a huge advantage for those that are going to make content, because the constraints have massively changed. And I feel like for the most part, it's been liberating to have those constraints change.
What we've got a question in the chat here. What service or how do you recruit global talent?
Yeah, so for us, we're really looking for post-production, right? So illustrators, animators, and editors. And so those are neat little boxes that people fit within, and they define their careers as wanting to do those things. And so for us, it's really important that we have a good HR partner that's got robust legal entities that can help us go into any location. So finding that partner is critical. And if you have questions on that, that's why my email's here. Like, let's talk through exactly what you need from a legal entity perspective. But from a creative perspective, then it becomes as flexible as posting jobs where people expect to find jobs. And the neat thing that provides for you, though, is sometimes it might not be posting a role on LinkedIn. That's certainly, we've had a lot of success doing that. But it could also be combing through Vimeo pages. I've done that to look for talent. And you come across something that looks really interesting as far as an animation style or an editor that really catches your eye. All of a sudden, it doesn't really matter where they're at. It's just the work that they've done and the expectation that they have around compensation for their work and how much time that they can give to your projects or your effort. So recruiting has definitely changed. I'd say if anything's changed in the last 3 years, it's got to be, where's the talent going to come from that's going to work on my productions? Well, they're going to come from everywhere.
Zach, how about for you?
Yeah, there's kind of two pieces. One is, recruiting for sort of employees, folks to come on staff, and that, I'll say we haven't figured out the best system. A lot of it is sort of how we do our recruiting for crew and so forth, which is really word of mouth has a huge influence. And we're somewhat fortunate in that, being in New York, it's quite a large market. People do know German speaking, people all over the world. I'm not saying, we have some of my producers in Amsterdam and Paris, so we, really are using those connections. So I would be very interested to find out if there are, other ways to find talent, because that is, it's, I know there's great talent out there, and I'm with you, Luke, like just going on Vimeo, like there is just, things that will just blow your mind what people can do. And it, to be frank, I don't think we have pinned a great system to try and locate that. Again, word of mouth, it's what's been working for us. Mm-hmm. But it would be great if there was just a broader net that we could throw.
Yeah, from my perspective, we hire globally, and it's Luke, you mentioned it, a good HR specialist, a recruiter, somebody who knows and takes the time to learn the skills, the tools that you need is important. When I'm talking to candidates, though, I'm really focused on their personality. Are they going to fit in with the culture of my team? Are they going to bring a unique skill set? Are they just here to collect a paycheck, or are they going to really help us move forward with our mission, be a contributor, be curious, that active learning kind of mindset. That's really important to me, and we've made a number of over the past 7-8 years really strong hires, and then that has led to other friends or colleagues, former colleagues, people that are acquaintances, and then it starts a snowball effect. And now we've got a really strong global team, and a lot of them have relationships outside of work or past work experience, and that has really helped us develop our team. The other thing I would highlight is, before you make a commitment is, do you try contractors before you hire a full-time employee? That way you can, see somebody's skill set and work, see how they jive with the team, and then make your decision on whether you want to move forward long-term.
Hey, Mark, one other thought.
Yeah.
I see that the original question came from David again. And so he may be talking about his Italy production. Jim McNeil here did mention Production Hub. I think that's a great option. And the question may have been specifically, how do I find crew in a place where I'm not setting up a permanent shop or looking for posts? So yeah, I think Production Hub is a great, there's a lot of resources for that. There is 90 Seconds has a great global network. Shootsta has a global cam op network if you're looking for a single camera operator. There are services like Specster who also have a global network. So
Cruise Control is another one.
Oh, great. Yeah. So there are resources, certainly. Oftentimes, that again makes the most sense. These people, you're not often doing projects with them on a weekly basis. This is kind of the thing where you grab a crew for a specific project. It's super common, which means, people that are living in those locations are probably used to responding to those kinds of requests. So I would find a good production partner that's got a global network that can keep you from putting people on a plane when it doesn't make sense. And sometimes you need your crew on set. Sometimes you can just hire one out.
And just for David, I can share a couple crews that we do use in Italy if he is interested.
Personal recommendations. Gotta love that. Going back to the chat here, have you found any unique remote solutions for reviews like dailies? David Helmly, I know you guys are getting into the camera to cloud business with Frame.io integration. Talk a bit about that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think these kind of collaborative, workflows are becoming mainstream. So for those that don't know, Adobe acquired Frame.io about a year and a half ago, and it's been a great product to join into our family of products. But it's taking over lots of different products at Adobe, so you'll start to see it go further out, even just outside of video. But I think it definitely is worth pointing out some of the advantages. One is obviously camera acquisition. Just thinking of remote work, just to begin the camera to cloud, as Mark, you were alluding to. The one thing I would also add to even a little bit of that is using an iPhone with something like Filmic Pro. There's other tools to do site surveying. Just thinking about Dave again in Italy, I think this is a great example of remote work that's out there and all the things that have to happen. Not putting someone on a plane, as Luke was saying, you're saving money, but all of this gets back down to collaboration. And I think there's a lot of tools out there. We certainly put some pride in Frame.io. I don't want to turn it into a Frame.io, commercial, but there's just a ton of thought that's gone into the amount of people that have to take a look at this media that are not technical. Mm-hmm. While we make it work great in our NLE and After Effects and all that stuff, what about the person that just needs to look at it on an iPad, or a cinematographer that just needs to see the quality of the video with some time code or things like that? All of that gets back into the collaboration hub, where it's just like, I want to be able to comment on this shot. So if you haven't seen some of those tools, it now starts right at acquisition, with time code. I think Michael Cioni who is kind of the grandfather of camera to cloud. A lot of us probably saw him talk, years ago on this topic. He uses a thing called to dailies. That was kind of his term, which I always thought was kind of clever, which kind of points right back to David's example, being able to see what's in the camera. But it's more than just being able to see it. You've got to be able to talk and collaborate, and having all these people that may not be on site, because we don't want to put them on planes. How do you get them talking about whatever the shot is? So someone's on site, they need to be able to get those comments back and forth. So, collaboration is going to be absolutely paramount to this remote workflow for sure.
Yeah, I would,
Zach,
I would just add on, again, for us, we don't have a lot of fast turn. I mean, we do a segment of our stuff is all very fast turn video. And so we don't necessarily have the need for dailies to be reviewed like that. But what we do is typically on multicam shoots, we'll have the actual edit, like a line cut that's happening live, and that's on frame IO for us. And that's just and then we can spend some time at least to go through that content. So it's not quite a daily, just camera footage, but it is really like a first pass really. And that usually happens on that same day. So I'm going to just call it a daily.
And, Mark, that really feeds into a lot of the topic today, which is, so we've got Zach shooting, he's got someone shooting this video. He's got to assign it to an editor in Italy who's asleep, maybe, right? Or an editor in, I don't know, California who's asleep, because you don't know where the editor is going to be. I guess I should say the editor doesn't necessarily need to be where the shooting's going on, because by the time you get those things uploaded or whatever needs to happen on the cloud, someone's going to wake up and they're going to have a full set of work to do. Those comments could be coming in while people are reviewing those things. So when the editor is ready to edit wherever they are, again, that was the other thing I know we talked about in the panel, is you're almost chasing the sun, the editor. So you've got to do this shoot, and then when the sun comes up in the morning after you've uploaded, they've got work to do. So you have to have all of these comments coming in about what's going on, because while they're editing, theoretically, those other people might be asleep. That's just the way the world's going to work now. I think it's not, we're not going to have everything together at one time, because you can't scale the kind of productions people are trying to do. And also you're saving money this way. I mean, it all gets back down to production cost,
You can keep things moving a lot faster that way. Luke, you guys work in this space daily, right? Like this is your wheelhouse, right?
Sure.
Assigning projects and keeping things moving quickly. How are you guys collaborating like that?
Well, yeah, Zach and I, again, this came up in our conversation earlier today, where we kind of went through the Shootsta platform, which really is our secret sauce, right? Customers are briefing in the project, uploading their media, making comments on that media. So by the time one of our production team leads look at it and assign it to an editor, we've already been through their notes. Everything it's really already kind of put together for us, so that it's a nice, neat little package for us to go attack. And actually, I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question of Dave, just to get his perspective, the Adobe perspective here. From the conversation that Zach and I were having earlier, we talked a lot about how tidy post-production has become. You have media, we can manage it. We can, frame is great for all of this feedback. We get notes. Pre-production is still so messy. If you look at what is really hard, it's, people have an idea, they go and shoot it. They haven't fully thought it out. There's all of these meetings around what the content is going to be, what it's going to look like, how we're going to get on set, getting on set. Camera to cloud seems like it's getting there. Again, from our conversation earlier, which no one was a part of, I don't know why I keep referencing it, but we had a great discussion about how at different points in our careers, we've really leaned on previs or, video edits that are put together before the project ever really kicks off, so that we know exactly what we need to capture on set. We kind of understand the narrative that's going to go through. We understand even things like music and graphics before we ever start rolling the camera. And it really helps put it in kind of a neat little package, but we're not aware of technology that's helping people prototype that and get feedback on that kind of, interaction and build those things, other than just going into the NLE and having an artist put them together. But collaborating around all of those ideas in pre-production and trying to get reductive in the brainstorming to figure out what you're actually going to do is still the messiest part of the entire process. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective, if there's any technology that's trying to tackle that early stage in production.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the only thing I've really seen, you take something, like Frame or whichever system you use, you kind of go in there almost like you would do in a project, and you would set the project up. You've got audio, you've got graphics, you've got all these different things that you kind of have this template. Well, we're starting to see collaboration and camera to cloud have templates. You've got, today's shoot, camera 1, camera 2, or it could be, the Sony Venice cameras, red camera, whatever it is, broken down by day. So an assistant's gone in there and kind of organized the Frame.io space that sort of says, here's where everything's going to go. And those folders also help you from forgetting things, because it's like, oh yeah, there's separate audio. How's that coming in? Because we also have audio to cloud, right? Like, it's not just all about cameras to cloud. You can actually upload audio with time coded markers and all that stuff. So all parts of the production. And I think you hit on something big, which is site survey, which we did talk about last time, just using iPhones, and going back to David's original question on Venice. Having someone, using Sunseeker, which was an app that a lot of us use, which tells you where's the sun going to be. I can go in and take my iPhone, and there's some apps out there. There's one from Ari called Magic, where I can get in there and say I'm using a 50 millimeter and 85, whatever it is, and I can kind of mimic what that shot might look like. Throw that in a previs folder and start getting people to think about this shot a bit more before they get on set. So I thought some of that in our last conversation really seemed to hit a note with a lot of people. I mean, you should use the cloud for everything you can, because it really does open up a lot of new opportunities. But these are also tools for the new work, as I often say, which is just like you'll come up with new ideas all the time the more you use it and the more you talk with other people. So
I would just add, and again, Luke and I kind of dug into this earlier today. It really, you're right. The tools for production, even, you're right. Get templates for the cloud. Once you get to production, like, we're kind of set. Like, the tools are amazing. It's constantly blowing our minds, right, with what we had to deal with 10 years ago, or when some of us started even much further back. But really, the pre-production part, oftentimes we're working with folks who maybe aren't as versed in the film or video world. And so I think that's what we were kind of trying to crack that nut of, like, wow, how can we collaborate with folks who maybe aren't, in that world as much, but they need content, they need to create something. And so I think previs is one of those options, but it's also, I think it's honestly feels like it's an opportunity there, because again, we, now we can have folks who don't know anything about video, as you said, go into Frame and make notes. Like, they don't need to know what time code is. They just click, hit return, and it's all taken for you. How do we move that into the before we even know what we're filming? Just something to throw out. I'm not saying
something on that too to add. Maybe Luke, and kind of see how you work as well. I think the idea of having Frame.io just lets you put whatever you want in the folder. It doesn't really care. I mean, video is great, audio is great, but you could put a shot list from Word or whatever processor you use, a script. So I have one place to go where I'm really thought I was getting my media there, but it's like, oh, I've got a script today, and are we using the red sheet, the pink sheets or the green sheets today? I can get in there and I'm always up to date. So everybody goes to a central place, which is another thing I think that the cloud brings in this remote workflow, is everything's in one place. I don't have to go ask someone, what sheets are we using today? Has the shot list been updated? So I don't know how you're doing that today, but it seems to me that having anything centrally located is going to be a bonus.
Yeah, for us, I feel so lucky because our world fits in such a neat little box, right? Customers hand us everything, we finish it, but it's so rare throughout my career to ever see a project fail in post, because occasionally you get an editor that has no energy for the project, and you've got a problem and you got to find somebody else or something. But projects fail all the time, but they fail in pre-production. There wasn't the right budget established. We couldn't get on the same creative page. there's just so many things that need to be built for a media operation system to be able to, for an organization to generate media. And it seems like we're all pretty lucky now to be working on, like, for the last 2.5 years of my career, it's been, solely focused on post-production. But pre-production is messy. And Zach described that to me earlier, where it's like, it's still just a lot of meetings. Like, there's a lot of conversations that need to happen and everything else. So the technology is great. I think maybe one of the critical things that people need to consider in this distributed video world is you still need incredible producers and incredible project managers. And without those people that can get really tactical and understand what's going on and drive an organization to make change and commit to something, you're probably not going to get very far. So perhaps those are areas where AI has a long way to go. You can generate 1,000 scripts now in 10 minutes, right? But it doesn't mean your organization is going to be able to make any of those videos unless you have those critical people.
I couldn't agree more on your producer, right? That's such a critical role. When I was in television, it just didn't get the respect or command the respect I thought it deserved. So many decisions to be made. That is the heartbeat of the project. A good producer will save a bad project any day.
For sure.
We were targeting 45 minutes here, and I think we've just skirted past that. Marty, did you want to wrap us up here? This has been another good conversation, and I feel like if we wanted to, we could keep this going.
Well, let me just ask you guys a quick, anybody going to NAB? And if so, anybody looking for anything?
I'm always looking for something at NAB for sure.
What are you shopping? But he's not selling, shopping. What are you shopping?
No. Always looking. I mean, this is probably a better thing to say, Marty. Where do I shop when I'm at NAB? I shop on people that are wall huggers, because I always find, those companies that are as far out from, in the cheap seats, if you will, because I love to look at innovation. You look at these companies that have great ideas that haven't quite made it to the expensive real estate at NAB. I will spend the bulk of my free time just amazed at some of the technology that's up against the wall. So for those of you going to NAB, if you haven't been before and you're looking for a tip, that's where you're going to find the most interesting stuff.
That's where you're going to find your makeup robot that you're talking about, Luke.
Yeah, the makeup robot for sure.
Sounds kind of terrifying.
It does sound like a great year to go, though, because I've been in this industry long enough that, we've seen a lot of cool things emerge at NAB, but never in my life do I remember as much innovation within this industry as we've seen in the last year. So to see what's in those small booths, I think is going to be, specifically very interesting. This calendar year should be a great show. And
I think cloud is going to be a huge theme. I know it is every year, but now what's different about this year, and it did come up in our panel before, it's trust in the cloud and trust in the process. It's no longer when cloud, right? I mean, cloud is here. There's a lot of trust. I mean, just look at look at Zach and Luke. I mean, they're putting their companies on the line here, and just some great companies supporting workflows. So again, trust in the cloud. It's here. It's now. So
thank you, guys. Yeah. Thanks.
I was going to say virtual production, LED technology, right? We're going to be looking at that again. We're still trying to learn how to use it. We just opened a studio in Chicago last summer with the LED walls, and it's very flashy and cool. We can get so much more out of it, and so we're still trying to learn, and that's going to be a big focus of mine.
Well, listen, guys, thank you for helping us, taking us to adding to the Q&A. It was a great show a month ago. It's great to see the conversation going. On my screen here, you see that we have 3 more of these Q&A sessions next week. We'll at same time, same place. Claudia Sousa from ASG will be leading the panel on making the cloud work on-prem. Follow Eric Weaver and his team will be talking about virtual production week following on the 16th. And we'll be wrapping up the Q&A series and maybe just wrapping up this year's show and focusing on NAB and focusing ahead by bringing together all the digital first conversations that took place. And just a reminder, we are back in Silicon Valley next year, January 23rd. So Mark your calendar. So with that said, I thank everyone again. If you want to join us with a Q&A next week, we hope you can. And stay in touch. The emails for the speakers are all in the chat.